Welcome to Mining Review Africa at Mining Indaba 2026. Today I'm speaking to George Jacob from TAKRAF. George, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rochelle.
From OIM perspective, what major shifts or emerging trends are you seeing in the mining equipment landscape, particularly within the African and Middle Eastern markets?
Sure. Rochelle, just to give you a bit of an overview, like TAKRAF is a global OEM for the various engineered solutions that we offer for mining, open cast mining, bulk material handling, and mineral processing. So under mineral processing, we have a range of comminution products, which is under TAKRAF. And we also do a lot of solid liquid separation equipments under the Delco brand. So that being said, what we are witnessing of late is sort of a client looking at innovative solutions, which is sustainable, because these days all the mining companies are looking at the ESG goals. And that being said, so they want to go like a water-wise solutions, like the dry stack tailings that we offer. And even when it comes to conveying, crushing and conveying, they want to look at options where they can reduce the energy consumption, basically. So we have various ways to achieve that with the intake crushing and conveying systems. And the other area where the clients are putting a lot of de-risking, I should say, is the fact that because of the mining cycle, if you want to call it, from the exploration phase to the FID, it's quite a long cycle. These days, you're talking about 15 years, so as long as that. So they basically, what they want to do is, as they come to the BFS or a FEED phase, they want to have an option where they would do the design to a certain extent and de-risk the project. And in terms of why we do that is because why the mining companies want to do it is because they want to reduce their capex, and any opportunity to do that, they're looking at options. So that's the reason why we see like a phased approach. So most of the companies are doing this phase 1, phase 2, where the phase 1, they do the sort of an engineering, you want to call it that way, like whether we provide the vendor certified information. And at a phase 2 stage, they go for the actual execution of the project. So some of the trends which we are witnessing in the industry, basically.
Okay. Aftermarket support is often a key differentiator for customers. How would you describe the strength of your local footprint in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically regarding spare parts availability, technical field support, and service response items?
Sure. Thanks. That's a long, but let me try to explain, because these days in aftermarket support is quite key. When it comes to a greenfield project or even for a brownfield project, in aftermarket support and in-country support is also very key. Like the client doesn't want to waste, time, and even like the downtime, each hour they spend is like millions of dollars lost. So they want to have this support locally. So we are, having a team, like if you look at Northern Cape and even for Middle Bulgaria, where we have a lot of machine footprint, we have a local office there which is supporting the client quite close to where they operate. And also these days, we are looking at various ways to do this support remotely with the digitally enabled tools. So that's something we are looking at. And there are instances where we are sort of refurbishing the existing equipments. And because of the support we provide them, and which is quite, because it's close enough for them to reach out to us and then provide that support. They're even calling us when they have a breakdown for which we are not even the OEM. So the areas where we can operate, we are supporting them.
Given ongoing global supply chain pressures, such as steel shortages and extended lead times for critical components, how do these constraints influence your project supplies?
Sure, I think it's a very valid question, because of the whole, what I recently heard somebody saying, we live in a VUCA world where everything is volatile, complex, uncertain, and ambiguous. So which is very true. So when you look at the global supply chain, because of this whole tariff scenario and, issues with regard to even logistics, there is a lot of uncertainty in the market, especially in the global steel market. I would say, like, there is a lot of overcapacity, high energy cost, and the regional sort of demand fluctuate. So the supply chain is, completely in a bit of a mess. So we are trying to, obviously, when we take a new project, we sort of analyze which is the better way to source, because we have manufacturing facilities all over the world. So we decide, depending on the project location and depending on the loading of the factories globally, we make a call where to source this specific or fabricate the specific equipment and where to source the steel. And the other thing maybe worth mentioning is the copper pricing, where copper pricing is also on the on an upswing, you can call it that way. And a lot of electrical items like the drives, the transformers, the cables and everything, which has got a lot of copper loading, you want to call it that way. So we are looking at that space as well and trying to mitigate the risk because of the, the disruption in the global supply chain.
Could you provide insight into the key automation and digitalization initiatives currently being driven by TAKRAF Group and how these technologies are shaping your equipment and service offerings?
Sure. TAKRAF has been, in terms of two pillars, if you want to call it that way, we are looking at innovation and sustainability as two pillars within TAKRAF. And if you look, we are putting in a lot of effort in terms of the digitalization effort. We're doing it a lot of internally within the company itself. We are moving into a digital platform when it comes to sales, HR, supply chain, and then going into the other spheres like aftermarket and the likes of it, just to enable us to support the client better. Mm-hmm. So we are moving away into some of the initiatives like digital catalogs, and then moving into in areas where our TAKRAF products would have a QR code based on which, the client can scan the QR code on various digital platforms and reach out to us and even get some of the drawings and the likes of it. To a certain extent, they can get those drawings readily available so that they know exactly what is going wrong and there's some space to be ordered. They can do that as well. So there are a lot of initiatives to digitalize that journey started, I would say, in 2023 with a 5-year time frame. So there is a digitalization manager who's working with TAKRAF, and the idea is by 2028, we get to that a bit more, in a position where we can utilize all these digital platforms, basically.
Sounds good. Does your company actively evaluate commodity cycles when prioritizing projects in Africa and in the Middle East? And are there any specific focus areas or commodity trends that you can share?
Sure. So we do because of the rising critical mineral, issue, which is globally, a big talking point, where earlier, it was primarily, if you look at the African scenario, mostly it was the Canadian and Australian miners who were operating in the space more actively, I should say. But nowadays, you can see that there is a lot of Chinese and Indian operators also looking into secure their portion of the critical minerals. And, if you look at the whole scenario, how it's evolving, we don't know, in next 5 years, even the terminology critical minerals is also a bit of a challenging thing to say. That like earlier it was all the critical minerals for green energy transition, but of late I was listening to some of the sessions here. So for each country, the critical minerals, that what they call it critical, is very, country specific, how you want to call it that way. For example, for South Africa, the PGMs and the coal is also critical, whereas to the countries in the West, We're more worried about the green energy transition. So, to answer your question, yes, 100%. We have a strategy team who is looking into the commodity trends, and what we seeing is definitely there is a big demand supply gap evolving in the copper space. We think the next super cycle is about to start. That's what we think, because of the, that as I alluded to earlier, like a mining cycle is about 10 to 15 years, and new copper mines are coming into existence in another maybe 10 years. So that demand supply gap, they're saying it's going to widen to an extent. By 2040 there would be a 40%, the supply gap would be about 40%, somewhere in that order. So copper is a key commodity we're watching quite closely. The other commodity being uranium. There is a lot of shift towards green energy, and the uranium is actually ticking that box very well. There are a lot of projects evolving in the likes of Namibia, Zambia, Malawi, and the likes, even in West Africa. So we think that space also is something where there will be a lot of investments going into that space. And recently I was reading about the amount of nuclear power plants going up in China, about 20 of them going up in China. And this evolution of this small modular reactor SMR technology is also evolving, so which can cater to the base load for a renewable energy sector. So yeah, copper and uranium is something we are watching very closely. But having said that, the PGMs in South Africa also, they're riding the wave. So a lot of brownfield expansions happening. So that's also something which we are watching very closely.
Good. Well, George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Thank you so much.